Welcome to the channel. Hit subscribe and dive into stories that'll stay with you long after the video. Enze, let's begin. The church bells had barely stopped, ringing when the whispers began. A low murmur rippled through the crowd, like wind shivering across wheat. The bride stood at the altar, her hands trembling inside white lace gloves, eyes fixed on the grand oak doors at the end of the aisle. They were still closed. Someone whispered, "He's late." Another voice answered, "He's not coming." The organist faltered, uncertain whether to continue. The priest shifted uneasily, glancing at the best man whose face had drained of all color. Her name was Clara, and for most of her life she'd imagined this day. She'd imagined Daniel standing beside her, sunlight pouring through the stained glass windows, his hand finding hers as they promised forever. But forever, it seemed, had decided not to show up. A slow panic crept into her chest, pressing against her ribs like a trapped bird. She took a step back, nearly tripping over the train of her gown. Her maid of honor, Elise, caught her elbow. "Clara," Elise whispered, "maybe there's traffic. Maybe he—" Clara's voice was barely a breath. "He wouldn't be late." Not Daniel, but even as she said it, her eyes flickered toward the entrance again. Then, without warning, the heavy doors burst open. Every head turned. It was the best man, his tie undone, sweat beading his forehead. He stopped halfway down the aisle, his chest heaving. "He's gone," he said, voice cracking. "Daniel's gone." The silence that followed was absolute. The bride didn't move, didn't blink. The words hung in the air like smoke. Gone. The guests shifted in their seats, a collective unease settling over them. Someone gasped. Someone else whispered a prayer. "Gone where?" Clara asked finally, her voice trembling. The best man looked at her with eyes full of pity. "He left. I found his note in the dressing room. He's not coming back." Her throat closed. The sound that escaped her wasn't a sob, not exactly. It was something smaller, sharper, like a piece of glass breaking inside her. Elise stepped forward, ready to catch her, but Clara held up a hand. "Don't." For a moment she just stood there, surrounded by flowers, lace, and all the ghosts of promises that would never be kept. Through the tall windows, a storm was gathering, dark clouds sliding across the sun. The light in the chapel turned cold. Guests began to rise awkwardly, murmuring condolences they didn't know how to offer. Someone suggested she sit down. Someone else tried to close the doors, but Clara didn't move. Her eyes were locked on the aisle, on that empty stretch of white carpet where Daniel should have stood. She whispered, almost to herself, "He swore he'd never leave me." Then she turned slowly, her veil brushing against her face like a whisper from another world. The priest hesitated, uncertain whether to follow her. She began walking, not down the aisle but toward the side exit, where the rain was beginning to fall. Each step echoed louder than the last. By the time she reached the door, thunder cracked over the roof, and every eye in the church followed her. No one tried to stop her. No one could. And as she stepped into the rain, the first tear finally fell, lost among the drops. She didn't know it yet, but this was not the end of her wedding. It was only the beginning of something far stranger. Rain pounded against the pavement as Clara ran down the church steps, the hem of her gown dragging through puddles. The wind tore at her veil until it slipped free, spiraling up into the gray sky like a ghost taking flight. She didn't chase it. Behind her, the murmurs of the guests faded into a blur. The sound of the organ had stopped. Everything that was supposed to happen, photos, laughter, the clinking of glasses, had turned to static. All she could hear now was the rain and her heartbeat. Elise caught up to her, breathless. "Clara, please, wait." But Clara kept walking, her white heels clattering on the wet cobblestones. "Where is he?" she demanded, her voice rough with disbelief. "You said there was a note. Where is it?" Elise hesitated, then reached into her clutch, pulling out a small, folded page. The ink had bled in places from the rain, but the handwriting was unmistakable. Daniel's. Neat and careful. Clara snatched it, shielding it from the wind. She read aloud, voice shaking, "Clara, I can't do this. I'm sorry. I know you'll hate me, but I can't live the lie anymore. Please don't look for me." She stared at the words until they blurred. "A lie?" she whispered. "What lie?" Elise bit her lip. Clara, maybe it's not what it sounds like. Maybe he panicked, but Clara shook her head slowly. No, Daniel doesn't panic. He plans, he calculates. If he left, he had a reason. Lightning split the sky above them, illuminating her face. White makeup streaked with rain. Mascara bleeding down her cheeks. Where would he go? She said, he doesn't have family nearby. His car's still in the lot. Elise's silence was its own answer. Inside the church, the best man stepped out, holding an umbrella over his head. Clara, please. You should come back in. The photographers, your parents, they're all asking what to tell people. She turned to him, eyes blazing. Tell them the truth. The groom ran, the best man winced. I'm sorry. I tried to stop him. He was different this morning. Jittery, kept checking his phone. When I asked what was wrong, he said, it's too late now. Then he was gone. Gone where? She pressed. He looked away. I don't know. For a long moment, the three of them stood there, bride, maid of honor, best man, soaked beneath a bruised sky. The wedding flowers along the church railing had begun to wilt, petals curling in the cold. Clara folded the note and slipped it into her bodice. Her jaw tightened. If he doesn't want me to find him, she said quietly, then that's exactly what I'll do. Elise frowned. Clara, don't. You need to rest. This isn't... But Clara was already stepping off the curb toward the parking lot, toward the car she'd arrived in just an hour ago. The car that was supposed to take her and Daniel to their honeymoon. Her dress clung to her legs, heavy with rain, but she didn't stop. Behind her, thunder rolled across the horizon. The best man called out, Clara! Please. She didn't turn back. In that moment, something had broken inside her, but something else had taken its place. Not grief. Resolve. Somewhere out there, Daniel had walked away from their vows, their future, and every promise he'd ever made. And she was going. To find out why, even if it meant tearing apart everything she thought she knew about the man she was supposed to marry. The rain hadn't stopped by. Nightfall. Clara sat behind the wheel of her small white car, headlights cutting through the mist as the wipers beat a steady rhythm. Her gown was draped across the passenger seat, soaked and crumpled, replaced by a gray sweater from Elise's trunk. The note lay on the dashboard, its corners curling, those few cruel words still echoing in her mind. A lie. Her phone buzzed for the 100th time. Elise again. She ignored it. Her first stop was Daniel's apartment. She knew the code, the one he'd said she could always use because forever means no secrets. The keypad blinked red. Denied. He'd changed it. She stood there under the porch light, raindrops tapping the brim of her borrowed hat, staring at the lock as if it might open out of pity. Why, Daniel? She whispered. Why today? Across the street, a neighbor's curtain shifted. A man's voice called out, You looking for Daniel? Clara turned. It was the old landlord, Mr. Peters, always in his robe, always half watching everyone. Yes, she said. Have you seen him? He scratched his chin. Left early this morning. Suitcase and all. Didn't look too happy. Where'd he go? He shrugged. Didn't say. But he wasn't alone. Clara froze. What do you mean, not alone? The man frowned as if realizing he'd said too much. There was a woman. Red coat. They drove off together. I figured it was you. A hollow sound escaped her throat. Half a laugh, half a gasp. That wasn't me. He looked uncomfortable. I'm sorry, miss. I just assumed. Clara turned back toward her car, heart pounding so loud it drowned the rain. A woman. Red coat. Every image of Daniel she'd ever loved flickered through her mind. His laugh, his careful honesty, the way he'd touch her shoulder when she worried too much. It didn't fit. None of it fit. But the picture was already shifting, warping, revealing edges she hadn't seen before. She drove to the next place she could think of, the cafe where they'd had their first date, the one that had once smelled of cinnamon and cheap coffee. It was closed, lights off, chairs stacked upside down on the tables. But as she pressed her palm to the glass, she could almost see them there again, laughing, talking for hours like nothing else existed. She shut her eyes. Who were you, really? Her phone buzzed again. She glanced down. A message from Elise. Clara, please come home. Your parents are worried. The police will help tomorrow. Don't do this alone. She almost typed a reply, but her fingers hesitated. She didn't want police. She wanted truth. That's when she noticed the folded slip of paper on the floor mat of the passenger seat. Something that hadn't been there before. She picked it up, heart hammering. It wasn't her handwriting. If you want answers, come to the lake. There was no signature, no time. Just those words. The same lake where Daniel had proposed last spring. Her breath caught. The world around her seemed to narrow to a single, pulsing thread. The engine hummed. The rain thickened. And without another thought, she put the car in gear and drove toward the darkness beyond the city lights. The lake was silent except for the rain. Moonlight slipped through the clouds in trembling streaks, brushing the water with silver. Clara parked by the old boathouse, headlights flickering against the wet wooden walls. Every part of this place breathed with memory. Daniel's laughter echoing across the water, their initials carved into the dock. The tiny ring box that had once held her future. Now it felt haunted. She stepped out of the car, shoes sinking into the mud. The air smelled of pine and wet earth, sharp and alive. Daniel? Her voice broke the stillness. If you're here, please. Just tell me why. No answer. Only the soft lap of waves against the shore. She walked to the dock. A small light glowed at the end, faint, unsteady. A lantern. Her heart kicked against her ribs. Someone was there. She moved closer, every creak of the wooden boards sounding too loud. The rain softened, thinning to a cold mist. Then she saw him. Daniel stood at the edge of the dock, the lantern beside him, his suit soaked, his hair plastered to his forehead. He looked older, tired, hollow-eyed. He turned slowly as she approached. "Clara," he said, "you shouldn't have come." Her voice shook. "You left me at the altar. You left us. Why?" He exhaled, his breath fogging in the cold. "Because everything I told you was built on a lie. I couldn't say I do knowing what I'd done." "What lie, Daniel? What are you talking about?" He ran a hand through his hair, rain dripping from his fingers. "Before I met you, I was with someone else. Her name was—" He stopped. "Her name doesn't matter. She disappeared 2 years ago. Everyone thought she ran away. But she didn't." Clara stared, her pulse roaring in her ears. "What do you mean she didn't?" "I found her," he whispered. "Here, in this lake." The words hit like a wave of ice. "You're lying," Clara said. "You're not making sense." Daniel shook his head slowly. "It was an accident. We argued that night." She slipped, hit her head. "I panicked. I didn't call anyone. I dragged her into the water and told myself it would disappear, that I could move on." Clara's voice broke into a whisper. "And you met me." "I thought I could start over," he said. "But when I looked at you, when you smiled at me, I saw her face. Every night I heard her voice. I couldn't stand in front of that altar knowing I'd built a life on her death." Lightning flashed across the lake, throwing their faces into stark relief, hers pale with shock, his twisted with guilt. Clara stepped closer. "Then why run? Why leave a note? Why not confess?" Daniel looked down at the black water. "Because someone found out. I got a message this morning, a photo of the lake, the ring, and a single line. You don't deserve her." He turned toward the trees. "She's here, Clara. The woman in the red coat. She's been following me. I thought she was gone forever, but..." A branch snapped in the darkness. Both their heads whipped toward the sound. At the tree line, a figure stood, still, watching, red coat gleaming through the mist. The figure didn't move, just stood there at the edge of the trees, half swallowed by mist, the red coat glowing faintly beneath the moonlight. Clara's breath caught. Her first instinct was to step back, but something in the stillness held her there, like the whole night was holding its breath. Daniel's voice was barely a whisper. "You see her too?" "Yes," Clara said. For a moment the rain seemed to hush. The water stilled. Even the wind waited. Then the woman took a slow step forward, boots sinking into the mud. Her hood fell back, and Clara gasped. The woman's face was pale, lips trembling, eyes wide with something between sorrow and disbelief. She wasn't some phantom from the lake. She was real. Daniel stumbled backward. "No, you're dead," the woman flinched. "You left me to die, Daniel." Her voice cracked, soft, human, fragile. Clara's heart hammered. She looked from one to the other, her mind spinning. "Who are you?" The woman's gaze shifted toward her. "My name is Mara." The name hit Daniel like a blow. Clara remembered it now, an old story he'd told once, vague and unfinished. Girlfriend who'd moved away. Mara's voice trembled. I didn't die that night. You thought I did, but I woke up on the shore hours later. You were gone. You never came back. Daniel's face went white. Mara, I panicked. I didn't know what to do. You thought you could start over. The accusation hung in the cold air. Clara stepped closer to Mara. Why come back now? Mara's eyes glistened. Because he was about to lie to you the way he lied to me. I couldn't let him trap you too. The words sliced through Clara's chest. She felt the truth ripple outward, cold and undeniable. Daniel reached for her. Clara, please, listen. I was wrong. I know that. But I love you. I ran because I couldn't live another day pretending. Clara's tears burned. You don't love me. You love what I didn't know. The silence between them was louder than thunder. Behind them, the lantern's flame flickered out, plunging the dock into shadow. Mara turned toward the trees. I came here to make peace, not revenge. I wanted to see if you'd tell her yourself. I see now you never would. She started to walk away, but Clara called out, Wait. Mara stopped, her silhouette framed against the mist. Clara stepped past Daniel, her voice steady. He doesn't get to decide how this ends. We do. For the first time that night, Daniel had no words. He sank to his knees, rain pooling around him, the weight of 2 broken lives pressing down. Clara walked to Mara, eyes bright with something fierce and new. She slipped off her engagement ring and held it out. He gave this to me, built on a lie. Take it. End it for both of us. Mara looked at the ring, then at Clara, then nodded once. She took it gently, like accepting something sacred. Daniel whispered, Clara, please don't leave me. She turned her face toward him, rain streaming down her cheeks. You left me first. Then she turned back toward the car, her dress clinging, her steps deliberate. Mara followed for a few paces, then stopped, watching her disappear into the fog. By morning, the lake was empty again. The dock creaked softly, carrying only echoes. Weeks later, people would talk about the runaway groom, the vanished bride, and the mysterious woman in red seen near the water. But Clara wouldn't answer questions. She had made her choice that night, not between 2 people, but between truth and illusion. And somewhere deep in her heart, beneath the wreckage of vows and thunder, she finally felt free. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and visit the channel for more real-life stories.